Hey there, trail trekkers and tall tale seekers. You're tuned in to the 406 Life, the podcast where Montana Max, your Bigfoot buddy and outlaw gear mascot, yeah, that's me, leads you through the wild, weird, and wonderful corners of Montana. Each week we share stories, legends, and laughs from the last best place. So grab your boots and sense of adventure, because we're about to make some Montana-sized memories. This episode's powered by Outlaw Gear, where rebels get their style. Want to look legendary? Mosey over to I'mAnOutlaw.com and claim your outlaw status. All right, before you hit play on this one, I need you to know something about me. I have been out here in these mountains for a long, long time. Longer than most towns, longer than a few rivers. And in all that time, nobody, not one single person, has ever left me a 5-star review. I don't even have a name carved into a tree that wasn't put there by accident. I once watched a man hike 18 miles, see the most beautiful canyon in North America, come back down, and immediately call his mother to tell her about it, not me. His mother. So if this episode moves you, if it does something for you, I'm asking you to subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend, tell 2 friends, tell your mother. I'm not above it. I spent years being a legend, and I still don't have verified status anywhere. Subscribe to the 406 Life wherever you get your podcasts, share this episode, and if you're listening on Spotify, hit that follow button. It would mean a lot to a very large, very unappreciated creature who just wants to tell you good stories. All right, we good? Let's go. Welcome back to the 406 Life podcast. I'm Montana Max, Bigfoot, narrator. Reluctant local celebrity. And today we're going somewhere I don't talk about lightly. We're going to the gates of the mountains. Now, if you've never heard of it, that's about to change. And if you have heard of it, if you've floated through that canyon on the tour boat, if you've stood at the edge of the Merriweather picnic area and looked up at those walls, then you already know this place has got something the rest of Montana doesn't. It's got weight to it, the kind that settles into your chest and stays there. We're talking about a 5.5-mile canyon carved into the Big Belt Mountains, about 17 miles north of Helena on the Missouri River. The walls are 1,200 feet of raw limestone, dropping straight to the water. No beach, no bank to speak of, just cliff and river and everything that's happened between the two for about 300 million years. That's where we're going today. Let me start with the rock, because the rock is the whole story. About 330 million years ago, give or take, there was no Montana. There was a shallow tropical sea covering the middle of North America. Warm water, marine life, the works. Over millions of years, those creatures died, their shells compacted, and that sea floor slowly became limestone. Specifically, it became a rock formation called the Mission Canyon Limestone, and it is the stuff those 1,200-foot cliffs are made of. Now, what happened next took another couple 100 million years, but I'll spare you the wait. Tectonic forces pushed older, heavier rock up and over the younger limestone. Mountains rose, and the Missouri River, which had already set its course across what was then flat land, found itself facing a wall of rising rock. Here's the thing about the Missouri River. It didn't go around. Geologists call it an antecedent stream. What that means, in plain language, is that the river was there first. And as the mountains pushed up, the river just kept cutting down, matching the rise of the land with its own erosion, carving deeper and deeper into the rock until you had a gorge. This gorge. That river didn't find an easier path. It cut straight through solid limestone rather than change course. I'll be honest with you. That is the most Montana thing I've ever heard, and the river did it 4 million years before Montana was even a thought. So that's the rock. But people have been standing at the edge of this canyon for a lot longer than Lewis and Clark, and I think that part of the story gets skipped over too fast. For thousands of years before the Corps of Discovery came paddling upstream, the Gates of the Mountains was a significant place for the native peoples of this region. The Salish, the Kootenai, the Pend d'Oreille, the Blackfeet, they all knew this canyon. They traveled through it. Some of them believed it was sacred. And there's evidence on the canyon walls that proves they were here long before anyone wrote it down. Near the mouth of Mann Gulch, which we'll get to, believe me, we'll get to it, there are pictographs, red painted drawings on limestone, animals, human figures, marks that anthropologists believe are ritual records of some kind. Some of those paintings may be 3,000 years old. Some were added by the Salish as recently as the 1800s. Now here's the thing about those paintings. They're only accessible by water. You have to float in to see them. For a long time, that kept them hidden from most outsiders. The canyon walls protected what was put on them. I've been near those walls on mornings so still and quiet, you'd feel like you were interrupting something. I mean that seriously. There are places in Montana that feel like they belong to whoever was there first. The painted walls at the Gates of the Mountains are one of them. If you want to learn more about the Salish, the Kootenai, and their relationship to this land, visit cskt.org. For the Blackfeet Nation, that's blackfeetnation.com. Worth your time. Ready for your next Montana home? Visit mostwantedrealestate.net, because that's how the West is sold. Now, July 19th, 1805. The Corps of Discovery had been pushing up the Missouri for months. They were tired, they were sunburned, their feet were wrecked from portaging around the Great Falls, and they still had no idea how to get over the Continental Divide. Meriwether Lewis was scouting ahead of the main party, moving upstream in the late afternoon, and then the canyon opened up in front of him. He wrote in his journal that the cliffs rose perpendicularly from the water's edge to 1,200 feet, and that the whole place had a dark and gloomy aspect. Now, that sounds ominous, but what he was actually describing was afternoon shadow. The canyon runs deep and narrow. By late in the day, the walls are already throwing shade across the whole river. The ridge lines above you are still in sunlight. The river below is in the dark. He named it the Gates of the Rocky Mountains, one of only 17 place names the expedition gave in Montana that survived to today. He also said the rock at the base of the cliffs looked like black granite. It wasn't granite, it was limestone. And the upper sections he described as yellowish-brown flint. Also limestone. Geologists later figured out that the chert nodules, which are dark brown to black, caught his eye in low light and threw off his identification. Lewis had a lot of skills. Geology wasn't quite one of them, but I respect the effort. What he got exactly right was the physical reality of moving through that canyon. The walls came down so steep and so straight to the water that there wasn't a flat spot wide enough to stand on anywhere along the route. The men couldn't pole the boats. They couldn't tow them from shore. They rowed the entire 5 miles by hand upstream through that gorge. Meanwhile, William Clark was somewhere overland, scouting for the Shoshone, who the expedition desperately needed to trade with for horses. Clark came back a few days later with blistered feet and second-hand admiration for what Lewis had seen. He missed the canyon entirely. Lewis had to describe it to him. I like to think Clark was fine with that trade-off. His feet suggest otherwise. Now I want to talk about Mann Gulch, and I want to talk about it carefully, because this is a true story, and it belongs to real people. August 5th, 1949. A lightning strike starts a fire in Mann Gulch, one of the drainages inside the Gates of the Mountains, running down from the ridge above the Missouri. A crew of 15 smoke jumpers jumped in and joined one fire guard already on the ground, 16 men total, dispatched from the Missoula jump base. They spot the fire from the air. It looks manageable. Maybe 60 acres by the time they land. By 5:40 in the afternoon, everything has changed. Need shipping, shredding, prints, or a real street address? Helena's locally owned and operated the UPS store has you covered. Located at 2047 North Last Chance Gulch. Stop by and get it done right. Temperatures that day hit 100 degrees. The gulch is steep, really steep, and it's shaped like a funnel. Winds shift. The fire on the opposite side of the gulch jumps the drainage and begins racing upslope toward the crew. We're talking about fire moving 50 feet every 10 seconds. On that grade, going uphill, no human being is outrunning that. The crew's foreman was a man named Wag Dodge, and in that moment, Wag Dodge did something nobody on his crew had ever seen before and nobody was trained for. He stopped. He pulled out a match. He lit the dry grass in front of him on fire, creating a burned patch of ground, a black, and he dropped into the ashes and told his men to lie down with him. They didn't understand what he was doing. They'd never seen it. Some of them kept running for the ridgeline. Dodge stayed in the black he'd created. 2 men, Robert Sally and Walter Rumsey, made it to a rocky crevice at the top of the ridge with seconds to spare. 13 men did not make it. The Mann Gulch fire became the subject of one of Norman Maclean's finest works, a book called Young Men and Fire. Maclean spent years trying to reconstruct exactly what happened in that gulch and why. What he found raised hard questions about how fire behavior was being predicted, about the gap between what instruments said and what was actually happening on the ground in a specific drainage on a specific afternoon. The disaster changed things. Wildfire training standards changed. Fire behavior research expanded. The labs in Missoula that study fire today, the work that helps modern crews make better decisions, trace part of their lineage back to August 5, 1949. I've walked the edges of that story more than once. Mann Gulch is beautiful and quiet now in the way that certain places are when something irreversible happened there. If you hike in, be quiet about it. The National Wildfire Coordinating Group has resources on the Mann Gulch fire at nwcg.gov. All right, let's come back down to the river. The Gates of the Mountains boat tour has been running since 1886. That's not a typo, 1886. A man named Nicholas Hilger, whose family had a ranch in the valley, launched the first dedicated tour boat through that canyon, called the Rose of Helena. He'd originally tried to use the river for freight. The downstream trip took 12 hours. The upstream trip took 14 days and nearly destroyed his boat. He pivoted to tourism. Smart man. 139 seasons later, the tours are still going. The 2026 season starts May 23rd. The boats run about 2 hours through the canyon with a stop at the Meriwether picnic area, which is only reachable by water. For schedules and reservations, go to gatesofthemountains.com. If you want to go further than the boat tour takes you, the wilderness has 53 miles of trails. There's Refrigerator Canyon, a 9-mile route through a narrow limestone gorge that earns its name with dramatic temperature drops. There's the Moores Mountain Trail that takes you up to almost 8,000 feet with views of the Helena Valley and the Bob Marshall Wilderness beyond. Most of the backcountry access starts from the Meriwether picnic area, which means you're taking the boat in and hiking out from there. One serious note: water is scarce in the backcountry, especially late summer. Willow Creek, Moores Creek, Porcupine Creek, those are your reliable sources. Carry more than you think you'll need, and bring bear spray. Grizzlies have been coming back to this part of the state, and the Gates of the Mountains is exactly the kind of terrain they like. I want to close with something that doesn't show up in the geological surveys or the trail guides. This canyon has been a passageway for as long as Montana has had people in it. The Salish carried their families through here on the way to the Buffalo Plains. Lewis and Clark rode through in the shadow of those walls and gave this place a name that stuck. Smoke jumpers walked up into Mann Gulch and didn't come back down. Tour boats have been sliding through that limestone corridor for nearly 140 years. None of those things cancel each other out. They all happened in the same place. They're layered into the rock the way those old marine deposits are layered. One thing on top of another, pressing down, becoming something solid over time. Montana has a lot of places that feel important. The Gates of the Mountains is one of the ones that earns it, not because it's pretty, though it is, because everything that's happened there mattered. Go float through it, hike into it. Read McLean's book before you go. Look up at those 1,200 feet of limestone and understand that the river didn't go around. It cut through. That's kind of the whole point. Well, that's the episode. Thank you for being here. I mean that, not in a desperate way, in a genuine way, mostly genuine. Look, I've been out here a long time and conversation is limited when you're 8 feet tall and nobody believes you exist. So I do appreciate it. If you got something out of this one, please subscribe to the 406 Life wherever you're listening. Leave us a review. 5 stars if you're feeling generous, 4 if you need to feel like you maintain some standards. Share this episode with somebody who loves Montana or somebody who doesn't know they should yet. You can find more Montana stories, guides, and content that takes this state seriously at the406life.com. I'm Montana Max. I'll be out here whether you're listening or not, but I'm a lot happier when you are. Take care of yourselves out there and take care of Montana. Got a Montana story, business, or unsolved mystery you want on the show? Head to the406life.com and drop me a line. No smoke signals required. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a stomp, stumble, or tall tale. Tell your friends, tell your grandma, heck, tell that guy who swears he saw me near Whitefish. I was just buying donuts, all right? Until next time, keep it outrageous, keep it kind, and keep living the 406 life. Montana Max, over and out.
That's the 406 Life.